Hi everyone, thanks so much for tuning into this Holistic AI webinar on the New York City bias audit legislation. My name's Oliver Patel and I'm the Director of Public Policy at Holistic AI. We're an AI risk management company with a mission to empower enterprises to adopt and scale AI with confidence. I'm really excited for today's discussion on this fascinating and important topic. The NYC bias audit law is a groundbreaking piece of legislation which regulates the use of automated decision-making tools in the HR context. By the end of this video, you will have learned everything you need to know about the new law and how to comply with it. You'll also learn about why it's so important for the automated tools which are used in the HR context to be ethical, fair, and safe. The use of AI and automation is becoming ubiquitous in HR decision-making. Enterprises are increasingly automating all aspects of the recruitment, talent management, and workforce management processes. Simply put, companies have no choice but to automate. They need to do so to remain competitive and agile in the modern economy. However, in doing so, they expose themselves to massive legal, reputational, and commercial risks, which we'll talk more about later. That's why robust AI risk management is critical. Before diving into today's discussion, I'd like to introduce the two co-panelists, Emre and Stefan. Emre, can you please introduce yourself and your interest in the topic?
Thanks, Ollie. Hi, everyone. My name's Emre Kazim. I'm co-founder and COO of Holistic AI. As Ollie mentioned, we are an AI risk management company. The long-term vision of our company is to ensure that AI can be used in a trustworthy manner and deliver on its transformative potential for society. Working to ensure that AI is used in HR decision-making is fair and ethical is a key part of this. We work with clients to prevent and detect, mitigate AI bias issues. We do this by auditing their AI systems and algorithms from both a technical and a governance perspective. We're currently very active with respect to the New York City bias audit law. We've been following the legislation extremely closely from the moment it was first proposed. And we're working with several HR tech vendors and enterprise clients to conduct the independent bias audits as required under the New York City legislation. I'm delighted to say that one of our partners in this area is RHR International, and Stefan.
Thanks so much for the intro, Emre and Ali. Hi, everyone. My name is Stefan Leday, and I'm very grateful to be here as a part of this discussion. I am the Director of Product Development and Innovation at RHR International. So as you can appreciate, this topic is near and dear to me personally and professionally. RHR is an independent global leadership consulting firm whose mission is to unlock the potential in leaders, a mission we take very seriously. One of our core solutions is an algorithmically derived assessment tool that we use to assess C-suite leaders on competencies core for their role and their ability to scale their leadership. It is thus critical for us to ensure that algorithms in general and the algorithms we use specifically for this tool are used to make decisions that have ethical outcomes. We are therefore working with Holistic AI to prepare for the requirements of the upcoming NYC bias audit law so that we can exercise maximal and thoughtful approaches to compliance.
Thanks so much, Stefan and Emre. So in terms of the structure for today's discussion, we'll cover three main areas. So firstly, we'll do a deep dive on the NYC bias audit law, where we'll explain everything you need to know about this groundbreaking law and how to comply with it. Secondly, we'll talk about RHR International's work and ambitions in this area, including their partnership with Holistic AI. And finally, we'll talk about the big picture issue regarding how automated tools and AI are used in HR decision-making, what the risks are, and the imperative of being proactive in getting ahead of these risks. So Emre, to kick off, a nice and simple question. Can you please explain to me what the NYC bias audit law is?
Thanks, Ollie. So to tackle the issue of AI bias, the New York City Council passed Local Law 144 in December 2021. The law mandates bias audits of, and this is the way they define it in the legislation, automated employment decision tools. So I'll refer to them, or we can refer to them also as AEDTs. which are being used by employers and employment agencies to employ candidates or promote employees residing in New York City. The law also has important transparency requirements, perhaps the most important aspect in terms of the public trust aspect. So once the bias audit has been conducted, the employer or employment agency has to make public the summary of results. So that's mandated in the legislation itself. They also need to give candidates or employees notice that an automated tool is being used at least 10 business days before the tool is used. So the law takes effect on the 1st of January 2023. From this date, the employers or employment agencies using the automated decision tools, so the AEDT, must have conducted a bias audit within a year before the tool is used.
I think the most important question to kick off from that is, like, what exactly is an automated employment decision tool? I think this is a term which has really been introduced by this law. So what kind of tools require bias audits?
Great question. The most common example of a AEDT is software which screens and filters resumes. Some graduate programs, for example, receive hundreds of thousands of applications. The only way that this could be filtered down in a manageable manner so that a select number are reviewed by humans is through automation. So put simply, the AI system is trained to identify what a good CV looks like, and I put good in quotation marks, and can assign a score or recommendation to each of these. The law defines an AEDT as a kind of computational system based on technologies like AI, machine learning, statistical modeling, or data analytics, which issues an output like a score, ranking recommendation, a classification, something like that. An AEDT is within the scope of this law. So any use of automated system like that is under the scope of this law if it's being used in the context of making decisions about screening candidates, hiring candidates, promoting existing employees, all of which, all for people who reside in New York City.
Thanks for that. And can you give like a couple more examples of the sorts of technology which are covered by this law? So are we just talking about specific tools, or is it broader?
So some of the examples of automated tools are the use of AI, which analyzes video interviews or to assesses the performance, competence, or even the personalities of candidates in that context. AI tools which assess, monitor, and score the performance and productivity of employees, which can inform decisions about who is promoted or even who's let go, who's actually fired. So kind of performance assessment systems. So the use of AI tools, the use of these kind of AI tools or automated tools is widespread. So I think according to one recent study, over 75% of businesses are using or considering using AI in their hiring processes, with about 7% fully automating their approach. Of course, we'd have to unpack exactly what we meant by that in terms of what they mean. But generally, there's significant amount of automation in these processes.
Thanks for explaining that. And I think at this stage, it's quite clear that the law is defining automated tools very broadly, and you'd be hard pressed to find any kind of major or even medium-sized enterprise which isn't using some of these automated tools in their HR decision making. And it doesn't just cover really sophisticated or cutting edge AI or machine learning. It's much broader than that. Another really important question is whether the law applies or covers these tools, even if the tool itself doesn't make the decision. So there'll be some cases where the automated tool makes the decision itself. So for example, with the CV screening or resume screening software, there may be thousands of applications and resumes which never make it past the first stage of screening. And therefore the tool is the sole decision maker as to which resumes make the cut or not. However, sometimes, or in other cases, these tools would assign a score or a recommendation or a classification to a resume, for example, where then a human would be able to review the resume with the score taken into account. So would the law cover tools used in both of these instances, whether the tool is making the decision or just making a recommendation or augmenting a human decision?
Great question. I think that's probably one of the areas that most people are a little bit confused by. They're saying, look, if we don't have an AI system or an automated system that just makes the final decision or or the concluding decision, then does it count? So I guess we need to think about what we mean by if it's only taking into account the output of an AI. The short answer is yes. Yes. The law probably does apply to them in our reading of it. The law mandates bias audits of automated tools which are used to, and I quote from the legislation, substantially assist or replace discretionary decision-making. So replace, and I put that in quotation marks, means instances where no human is involved and the output of a tool is the sole basis of the decision. Whereas substantially assist means situations where, for example, the output of the tool is weighed or weighted as part of the most significant criterion used to make the decision, or the output of the tool is used to override or modify the human decision. So in these kind of, we've got to think it's not mandating the auditing of automation in a HR company, it's mandating auditing of the use of algorithms in, say, human resources writ large.
Great, thank you. So far we've established that bias audits need to be conducted on automated tools which are used to substantially assist or replace human decision-making about who should be hired or promoted if the individuals concerned live in New York City. So before delving a bit deeper into who should conduct the bias audits and what they should consist of, Stefan, would you be able to tell us a bit about which sort of tools or systems RHR uses which might fall within the scope of this legislation?
Yes, absolutely. So it's funny because we sit on probably the end of the scale that uses or informs our decisions about leaders and does not apply the tool to automatically screen them. And that's because of the high stakes and level of consequential decisions that we make. We sit and work with top leading firms across the world, and within that, the top of house within those organizations. And so we want to be as data-backed and as evidence-based as possible within our processes and methodology, but ensure that we have the nuance and arbitration of a human before we come to these sort of decisions. And so what RHR's tool does is it assesses through a objective, fair, and scalable version of our unique IP, what it is that a leader needs to do or understand to be the best version of themselves. And then based on their output or scores, we work with our HR partners or our hiring managers to determine if these leaders are fit for the role or for the task at hand.
That's really interesting, thank you. And I think that that sort of augmentation or support of human decision-making that these automated tools are increasingly providing is definitely one of the big trends that we're seeing. So now back to the legislation. Emre, can you please explain who should conduct the bias audit and what the bias audit should actually consist of? So what is a bias audit?
So the law requires that bias audits must be impartial evaluations conducted by an independent auditor. Amendments which were recently proposed by the New York City Department for Consumer and Worker Protection further clarify that an independent auditor must be a group or person that is not involved, and I quote here, not involved in using or developing an automated employment decision tool. So this means that a tech vendor that develops and supplies an automated tool to an employer probably cannot conduct the bias audit themselves. In terms of what the bias audit should consist of, at its core, it must be an impartial evaluation, which we expect, which assesses whether the tool discriminates based on protected characteristics such as gender, sex, ethnicity, or race. So the AI tool, the automated tool used, must be tested to determine whether it adversely affects one protected category over another. So it's performance across different demographics. So for example, if the tool is recommending that a much higher proportion of white men are being promoted than Latinx women, the bias audit must highlight this. So at a minimum, the audit has to assess the selection rate for each protected category, which means that what proportion of categories are being processed, or what proportion of the category are progressing, as well as the impact ratio for each protected category, which means how each category is performing relative to the best performing category. The bias audit must be conducted within a year before the tool is used. So if a company wants to use a tool to automate its hiring process on the 1st of January 2023, it should have conducted the audit before then. But after it should have been, yeah. So, but after the 1st of January 2022, so within a year.
Thank you. That's really interesting. Thanks so much for explaining. So far we've established that employers and employment agencies are prohibited from using automated tools to hire candidates or promote employees residing in New York City unless an independent bias audit has been conducted within a year before the use of the tool. So if that tool continues to be used over the years, then a bias audit would have to be conducted annually. Now, I think it's safe to say that the main purpose of this law is to promote transparency around fair and ethical decision making in the job and HR context. So, Emre, can you please explain a little bit more about what the law's transparency requirements are and what businesses need to be aware of?
Absolutely. The law requires that a summary of results of the audit be made publicly available on the website of the employer or the employment agency, which should be updated annually as the results from the most recent audit become available. So the DCWP's proposed amendments require that the summary of results includes the selection rates and the impact ratios based on sex and race ethnicity, the date of the bias audit, and the distribution date of the AEDT automated tool, i.e. the tool that was used in the first use. The law also stipulates that employers and employment agencies must notify candidates or employees at least 10 days before the tool is used. So the proposed amendments have clarified that the notice can be given on the careers section of the employer's website, in a job posting, or sent via mail or email.
I think a lot of companies have looked at that 10-day notice rule and had lots of questions about it. So what's actually the purpose of the notification requirement? What are they trying to achieve there?
So this notice period gives individuals the opportunity to request an accommodation or alternative selection process. However, the amendment also explicitly states that the employers and employment agencies are not required to provide an alternative selection process or accommodation. It's therefore up to the employers whether to change their processes for candidates and employees who do not wish to be assessed by an automated tool.
Great, thank you. And the final question that I have on the legislation is, what happens if companies fall foul of its requirements? Are there penalties or fines for non-compliance?
So actually, employers not complying with the law are subject to penalties of $500 for the first violation and each additional violation occurring on the same day. Subsequent violations incur penalties of about $500 to $1,500 per day. But really, it's the reputational damage that's the big cost for companies. It could be much more significant than the fine itself. As we expect, there'll be a great deal of like attention, media and civil attention on this issue. So people care about their systems being fair and unbiased. So really, that's at the core of that's really at the core of this.
I totally agree with that. And thank you so much for the comprehensive explanation of the NYC bias audit law. So just something we mentioned a few times was the proposed amendment. So back in September, the Department of Consumer and Worker Protection proposed a series of amendments to add a bit more detail and clarify aspects of the law. We've spoken about them throughout this discussion, and there's going to be a public hearing in late October on that. So we'll keep everyone up to date on that. And at Holistic AI, we've produced a ton of resources on the NYC bias audit law, covering everything you need to know. So check out our blogs, white papers, etc., to dive deeper into the specific issues, including those amendments. And I think the final point I'd like to make on this is that this law is really interesting because it potentially affects hundreds of thousands of companies across the US, from HR tech vendors who produce and supply these tools, to staffing agencies whose whole business model depends around the use of these tools, and to large and medium-sized enterprises with kind of normal, in inverted commas, HR functions. So it's a really, really important development that I think companies should be aware of. Now, moving on to the second part of the discussion, Stefan, to bring you in, can you please tell me a bit more about RHR International's interest and work in this area, and some of the things that you're doing to prepare for the upcoming 1st of January deadline?
Yeah, thanks, Ali. I first want to say thank you so much to you both, and especially you, Emre, for such an exhaustive deep dive on the law. I think even through my readings, there were nuances and points that I hadn't yet internalized and onboarded, and to this discussion have richly benefited from learning more. But I'm in that vein, actually, I'm very pleased to share more about RHR's work and ambition in this space. And first want to say that we recognize that this is a really groundbreaking shift and a groundbreaking law, and an important one in an important time in our work in maximizing fairness through automation and selection, and through employing psychology to differentiate candidates. And so I appreciate the NYC Council for getting on top of this through policy. It's the first law to require an independent bias audit of automated tools in HR, which is groundbreaking, as you can appreciate. And what I can imagine from this is, as with most things in most industries, NYC or New York usually starts a trend, and the rest of the world catches up. So I imagine this is just the first step in a very long and widespread journey. But given our values as a company, this is really something we are taking seriously. And it's why we've decided to partner with the Holistic AI team to commission a bias audit. We want to ensure that we're not just compliant with both the spirit of the law, but its specific requirements as well. And while I applaud and support the ambitions of what this law is looking to accomplish and achieve, I would say that it's just incidental and it should be periphery and not essential to our work. We at RHR recognize that the automation processes and tools that we use to inform and support our consulting model and crucial decisions about leaders affect people's lives and the successes of organizations in very deep and profound ways, which means we have a responsibility to ensure that these tools are developed and deployed in the safest, most ethical and legally compliant manner possible. So ethical and responsible AI and automation is a top priority for a business like ours. We've made a commitment to our clients to protect their information, their data, and the work that they're doing with their people. And so as a part of our core mission, we believe that we can unlock the potential in all leaders. And if the tools that we've been using to achieve this are biased or discriminatory in any way, we would be failing our purpose and our mission. And so that's why we've been taking this work very seriously and getting in front of the law, in fact, by ensuring that we have a fair and ethical algorithmic decision-making process at the core of what we do.
Thanks for that. It's really inspirational words and fantastic to hear. And I totally agree that this law, it's the start of many. You know, New York, the New York City Council, they've set the agenda with this, but we're already seeing so many more developments in all sorts of jurisdictions around the world, which are similar. And we'll talk more about that later on. But can you just please elaborate a bit, Stefan, on the importance of AI risk management to RHR and how it supports and enhances what you do as a business, as an organization?
Yeah, so RHR has a real widespread global footprint. We work with some of the biggest enterprises in the world, from large retailers, big box retailers, to banks, to restaurants. We have a real diverse set of clients. And with that, we have a really wide range of client solutions, which includes leadership assessment and team assessment and development for both of those categories and groups. Our clients are partners really though. And what we try to do alongside with them is identify individuals that should be trusted to lead in such critical positions in such critical organizations. And then we hope to support these individuals in their journeys of understanding all the implications of having such positions and enabling and setting them up for success to perform at the best of their ability. So we feel this huge burden of responsibility to do things properly and correctly. And this is because these leaders, again, have such an important role in more than just their organizations and their direct teams, but in our society at large. And as we can appreciate in examples of leadership globally, it's a mission that is critical for the lives of many. And it's also crucial that we are ensuring that our assessment processes and development processes are coming from diverse and representative backgrounds so that we can support diverse and representative leaders in these crucial and critical roles. And the algorithms that we use must thus not undermine this process at all. So it's simply not feasible to do the work that we do using without using data and automation. And thus our tool powers us to make faster, better, and more accurate decisions that are more reliable over time. It is also our responsibility then to ensure that any risks, especially in the form of bias and discrimination, are mitigated to the best of our ability. So I believe that responsible AI is much more than just a legal or regulatory requirement. It's a competitive differentiator for sure and sets us apart from the other players in our space. It's also a great enabler of innovation. And above all else, it's just the right thing to do and aligns to our purpose and the contributions we want to have to our communities and society at large.
That's really, really powerful. Thanks so much for that. And I think, yeah, totally agree with you in that, you know, responsible AI risk management is a competitive differentiator. You know, the companies that are really, or the organizations that are really taking this seriously now are ahead of the curve. So speaking of which, can you please tell us a bit more about your partnership with us here at Holistic AI and how we're working together to both prepare for the NYC bias audit law and also on these issues more broadly?
Yeah, so I take real pride in this one because, of course, we want to have been ready for the changes that will be enacted on January 1st of 2023. And there's a part of that, which is why we chose to partner with Holistic AI months ago. But our partnership with Holistic is much more than that. And it involves the obvious mandatory auditing as required by the legislation. But we also want to ensure that we are fully understanding the consequences of this work and of the laws and mandates that are popping up, but also the methodology that sits underneath best practice. And so we are committed to ensuring that our systems and decisions are made with openness and transparency throughout. Holistic AI is a great partner in realizing these goals and ensuring that we're accountable at every stage and acting within this maximal awareness. So we aspire to support our clients on their journeys as well, to employ the most compliant and fair methods for making decisions about their leaders in such critical positions. And accordingly, we find it very important to mitigate any risks, again, of algorithmic decision-making processes, which we've outlined in this conversation thus far. And although bias auditing is a necessary and important part from that, there's so much more that we can do together. There's so many more conversations and opportunities for thought leadership to make sure that we are not just following best practice, but we are also setting the standards. And so with that, we're super delighted to be working with you all with such a innovative and purposeful team who take great care and time to ensure that we feel supported throughout the process. And at RHR, we believe that we are way ahead of the curve in this, and we've been preempting changes that are going to happen within our markets and within our clients. And we take, again, great pride in being such a forward-thinking company and setting the standard for our contemporaries to follow. And so all the other companies in our space, we hope, will take it upon themselves that they need to be acting now to ensure that their own AI and algorithms are fair and ethical as well.
Well, thanks so much for those kind words. We're really delighted to be working with you and the team at RHR. And I think what we say at Holistic AI is that, you know, AI risk management is just becoming, or is an essential part of doing business. Regulators are requiring it. Consumers are increasingly expecting and demanding it, and businesses, or forward-thinking businesses like yours, are embracing it as a strategic necessity. So thanks so much for that. Emre, to finish off today's discussion, can you please speak a bit more broadly about how to manage the risks of AI and automation in the HR decision-making context, especially in the realm of bias?
First, I just want to say thanks to Stefan for those kind words that he said about us. We're just absolutely thrilled to be working with RHR, and completely agree that responsible AI and robust AI risk management is a business enabler, is a competitive differentiator, as well as just the right thing to do. So it's just a real pleasure to work with a company that has that similar attitude, similar cultural position on this. You know, to remain competitive, businesses have no choice but to use to start automating to be able to do these processes at scale. So it saves costs, it improves decision-making processes, and enhances employee and job applicant experience. However, AI also exposes, you know, enterprises to significant commercial, legal, and reputational risks. If enterprises fall foul of AI regulations, such as the New York City bias audit law, they'll also be subject to penalties and legal action. Also, biased algorithmic decision-making can lead to high-profile scandals and media attention, as we've seen in some cases already. So algorithms can introduce additional sources of bias in addition to human biases. So for example, the data used to train an AI system can be a source of bias if it's not representative. So if it doesn't actually represent the kinds of groups that it's going to be applied upon, so it's not evenly distributed or has an even distribution of subgroups, or if it's derived from biased human judgments. We've seen lots of examples of where the system are just replicating the way humans have made decisions in the past, and rather embarrassingly for humankind, we haven't got a great track hold on these issues. So this is how AI tools can automate and amplify historical societal biases. So one of the most high-profile cases that I alluded to actually just a second ago was Amazon's CV sieving tool. So they were sieving resumes, and the company trained a model to sift through the resumes of applicants by using the resumes of those who had previously applied to technical positions at Amazon. So since most of the applicants were male, the algorithm learned, in quotes, to penalize the resumes of female applicants and assign them lower scores. So the resumes that included words such as like women's, so for example, women's sport or women's college or women's football, for example, were negatively scored, likely because this was not a phrase included in any of the males' resumes, which dominated the training group. So establishing a robust AI risk management system is the only way to ensure that these tools don't cause that kind of legal, reputational, or commercial damage. It's the best way. It's the way to take it seriously and really do everything in your power to take the problem by the horns. AI risk management is the process of identifying, verifying, mitigating, and ultimately preventing AI risks or doing everything in your power to prevent them. It's an essential part of doing business, like safeguarding data and ensuring robust cybersecurity. It entails auditing and assurance of these algorithmic systems to ensure that there's no issues relating to these bias, to the system performance, to transparency or privacy even. So it's important to say that bias is not just an engineering or technical issue. It's primarily a societal issue. Fairness in society, we haven't done a great job. But there are things that we can do to mitigate the effects of societal bias on our automated decision tools.
That's great, thank you. And so to finish off today's discussion, let's cycle back to a topic that came up earlier. Basically, how the NYC bias audit law is merely the first of many to come in this area. So we've seen developments in the EU, we've seen developments in other US states like Colorado, California, Washington. So yeah, can you tell us a bit, Emre, about what else is coming down the track?
It's really, there's just so much activity in this space. So, in terms of the broader issues of AI in the HR context, so the New York City law is just the beginning. The legislation is the first of its kind in the HR space. While it's only being enforced in New York City, it could apply to businesses across the US, as it covers any company hiring candidates, promoting employees residing in New York City. And New York City is quite a significant city in the context of not just America, but the world. There are many other relevant laws with similar ones or more extensive requirements and businesses. So the EU AI Act, so the European Union is proposing a continent-wide legislation in this space, and it's going to impose a sweeping set of requirements on companies which develop and deploy AI tools in the HR context to make or inform decisions about recruitment, promotions, terminations, or any other aspects of workforce management. The AI Act is set to be the GDPR of AI, with hefty penalties for non-compliance, so up to 6% of global turnover. Its extraterritorial scope, like all EU legislation, and mandatory requirements for businesses. It will apply to businesses all over the world if they operate within or sell to the EU, and that's why it has that extraterritorial aspect. There are also some interesting laws in other US states, such as Illinois, which a few years ago passed legislation on video, called the Video Interview Act, and the White House has also just published proposals for an AI Bill of Rights. The key message is that governments and regulators are taking this very seriously. The risks of AI are right up there, and businesses really need to be on their brief regarding these new laws and this new category of risk management. These developments will significantly increase public awareness about the risks of AI in HR and the importance of responsible AI more broadly. High-profile cases of enforcement, litigation, and scandals will probably pile up. We've seen actually in the last 5 years or so, just lots and lots of cases, almost the headline of the week, every week, hearing about algorithms gone amok. So forward-thinking companies should manage these risks proactively and in a committed way, ensuring that the AI they use is ethical, trustworthy, and their bias is managed and mitigated. So AI risk management is becoming an essential part of doing business. Regulators are requiring it, consumers increasingly expect it, and forward-thinking businesses like RHR are embracing it.
That's great, thank you. And I think, we've had a great discussion today on the HR and AI and automation intersection, specifically in the NYC bias audit law. The EU AI Act is much broader than that. It regulates the use of AI across many, many different areas and industries, so it's going to have a huge impact. And if anyone watching wants to learn more about that or any of the issues we've discussed today, please check out our website and blog and resources section, and we'll be doing future videos like this on different topics. But we'll draw a close to today. Thanks so much, Emre and Stefan, for a brilliant discussion. It's been really great to get your insights on this important area, so thank you.